Hello and welcome. I'm so grateful you found your way here tonight. If you're coming back from our other journeys, it's wonderful to have you with us again. If this is your first time, welcome to this place of calm and rest. Tonight, we're not traveling to distant oceans or faraway planets. Tonight, we're staying closer to home, but venturing into a place that's just as mysterious and magical in its own way. We're going into the forest, into the quiet green world of trees and moss and filtered sunlight, into ancient groves where time moves differently, where the air smells of earth and rain, where leaves whisper secrets in languages older than human words. There's something deeply calming about forests, isn't there? Something that feels like coming home, even if you've never been to that particular forest before. Maybe it's genetic memory, the knowledge that our ancestors lived in and around forests for millions of years. Maybe it's the way light filters through leaves, soft and green and gentle. Maybe it's just the overwhelming presence of life, quiet but insistent, growing and breathing all around you. Over the next 3.5 hours, we're going to explore the forest together. Not by walking through it, but by learning about it, fact by fact, story by story. We'll discover things about trees that will astonish you. We'll learn about the hidden networks beneath the forest floor, about the creatures that make the woods their home, about the cycles of growth and decay that have been turning for millions of years. But this isn't a test. You don't need to remember any of this. Just let the words wash over you like dappled sunlight through leaves. Let them carry you gently toward sleep. So take a moment now to get truly comfortable. Adjust your pillow one more time. Pull your blanket up to exactly where it feels right. Let your body sink into the mattress. Feel the weight of the day lifting off your shoulders. And as you close your eyes, imagine you're lying on soft moss in a clearing in the forest, with the canopy above you filtering the light, with the sound of wind in the leaves like a lullaby, with the scent of pine and earth surrounding you. Let's begin our journey into the forest. Forests cover about 30% of Earth's land surface, which is approximately 16 million square miles. That's an area larger than the entire continent of North America. These forests aren't just collections of trees standing near each other. They're complex, interconnected ecosystems where every plant, every animal, every fungus, every microbe plays a role in an intricate web of life that has taken thousands or millions of years to develop. When you walk into a mature forest, you're entering a community that's older than human civilization, a living system that was ancient when the pyramids were being built, that was already well established when the first humans learned to write. The forest doesn't care about our human timescales. It operates on its own timeline, where a human lifetime is just a brief moment where change happens so slowly it's almost invisible, but where those slow changes accumulate into transformations that reshape entire landscapes. Trees are the oldest living organisms on Earth. The oldest known tree is a Great Basin bristlecone pine in California named Methuselah, which is over 4,800 years old. That tree was already ancient when the Egyptian pyramids were new. It was 1,000 years old when the Bronze Age was just beginning. It has lived through the entire span of recorded human history and was alive for thousands of years before humans invented writing. But Methuselah isn't even the oldest living thing on Earth. There's a clonal colony of quaking aspen in Utah called Pando that shares a single root system. The colony covers over 100 acres and consists of over 40,000 individual tree stems, all genetically identical, all connected underground. This single organism has been alive for an estimated 80,000 years, maybe longer. It has survived ice ages, droughts, fires, and countless other catastrophes. While individual stems live and die, the colony continues, growing new stems from its ancient root system. 80,000 years. When Pando first sprouted, Neanderthals still walked the earth. Modern humans hadn't even left Africa yet. That's how old some forests are. They contain living beings that connect us to a past we can barely imagine. The tallest trees on Earth are coast redwoods, Sequoia sempervirens, which grow along the coast of California and Oregon. The tallest known redwood, named Hyperion, stands 380 feet tall. That's taller than a 30-story building. To stand at the base of Hyperion and look up is to crane your neck back until it hurts, trying to see the top disappearing into the canopy above. These trees are so tall that their tops exist in a completely different microclimate from their bases. The top of a tall redwood experiences more wind, more direct sunlight, and lower humidity than the base. Different species of plants and animals live at different heights in these trees, just as different animals live at different elevations on a mountain. The top of a redwood is like an island in the sky with its own unique ecology. Scientists have found salamanders living in pools of water trapped in hollows near the tops of redwoods, salamanders that may spend their entire lives hundreds of feet above the ground, never touching the earth. These trees are so large that they're essentially vertical ecosystems, containing multiple habitats from soil to sky. Coast redwoods can live for over 2,000 years, but their relatives, the giant sequoias that grow in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California, can live even longer. Some giant sequoias are over 3,000 years old. These trees are also enormous in terms of volume. The largest tree by volume is a giant sequoia called General Sherman, which contains about 52,000 cubic feet of wood. That's enough wood to build about 40 average-sized houses. The trunk of General Sherman is over 100 feet in circumference at the base. You could drive a car through some of the tunnel trees that have been carved through fallen or dead giant sequoias, and you'd still have room on either side. These trees are so massive that when they fall, which happens rarely, but inevitably, the sound can be heard for miles, and the impact shakes the ground like a small earthquake. A falling giant sequoia creates an instant clearing in the forest, letting light reach the forest floor and giving seedlings and understory plants a chance to grow. The death of these ancient giants makes room for new life, continuing the cycle that has been going on for millions of years. The forest floor is not dead or inactive, even though it might look that way at first glance. Beneath the fallen leaves and needles, beneath the rotting logs and the layer of humus, there's an entire world of life. The soil in a healthy forest teems with organisms. A single handful of forest soil contains more living organisms than there are humans on Earth. Billions of bacteria, millions of fungi, thousands of protozoa, hundreds of nematodes, along with mites, springtails, and countless other microscopic creatures. All of these organisms are working to break down dead organic matter, releasing nutrients that plants can absorb, maintaining the fertility of the soil. Without this invisible army of decomposers, dead leaves and fallen trees would pile up forever. Nutrients would be locked away in dead tissue, and the forest would eventually starve. But because of these tiny creatures, death in the forest becomes life. Every fallen leaf feeds the soil. Every dead tree becomes a nursery for new growth. The forest recycles everything, wasting nothing, in a cycle that has been perfecting itself for hundreds of millions of years. Trees communicate with each other. This isn't a metaphor or an exaggeration. It's a scientific fact that's been discovered relatively recently and has revolutionized how we understand forests. Beneath the forest floor, trees are connected by networks of fungal threads called mycorrhizae. These fungi form partnerships with tree roots, wrapping around them or even growing inside them. The fungi help the trees absorb water and nutrients from the soil, particularly phosphorus, which is essential for plant growth. In return, the trees provide the fungi with sugars created through photosynthesis. But the mycorrhizal network does more than just help individual trees. It connects trees to each other, sometimes different species of trees, creating what scientists now call the wood wide web, a forest-scale network through which trees can share resources and information. When a tree is attacked by insects, it can send chemical signals through the mycorrhizal network to warn other trees, which then increase their production of defensive compounds even before the insects reach them. When a large tree is healthy and producing excess sugars, it can share those sugars through the network, with smaller or weaker trees helping them survive. Mother trees, the oldest and largest trees in a forest, act like hubs in this network, connected to hundreds of other trees, supporting their offspring and even supporting trees of different species. When a mother tree is dying, it can send a final surge of nutrients through the network to younger trees, giving them resources for growth. The forest, we're learning, is not a collection of individual trees competing with each other, but a cooperative community where trees help each other survive. It's a completely different way of thinking about how forests work, and it suggests that trees might have something we could almost call intelligence, though it operates in ways completely unlike human intelligence, on timescales of weeks and months rather than seconds, through chemistry rather than electricity. Let yourself relax deeper now. Feel your breathing slow and deepen. Imagine you're lying on the forest floor, and beneath you, unseen, that vast network is pulsing with life and information, connecting everything in a web of mutual support. The Amazon rainforest is the largest rainforest on Earth, covering about 2.1 million square miles across 9 countries in South America. The Amazon contains about 10% of all the species on Earth. Scientists estimate that there might be 16,000 different species of trees in the Amazon alone. To put that in perspective, all of North America, from Mexico to Alaska, has about 1,000 native tree species. The Amazon has 16 times that much diversity in an area that's smaller. And it's not just trees. The Amazon is home to over 40,000 plant species, 1,300 bird species, 3,000 fish species, more than 400 mammal species, and millions of insect species, most of which haven't even been discovered or named yet. When scientists study a single tree in the Amazon, they often find hundreds of insect species living on it, many of them found nowhere else on Earth. Species that live their entire lives in the branches of one tree and are so specialized they couldn't survive on any other. Species of tree. The Amazon is often called the lungs of the Earth because of all the oxygen it produces, but that's actually a bit misleading. The Amazon does produce about 6% of Earth's oxygen through photosynthesis, which is significant. But the trees and other organisms in the Amazon also consume oxygen through respiration, especially at night when photosynthesis stops but respiration continues. When you factor in all the breathing being done by all the organisms in the Amazon, from trees to insects to bacteria, the net oxygen production is close to zero. The Amazon produces oxygen during the day and consumes it at night, roughly balancing out. So if the Amazon isn't the lungs of the Earth in terms of oxygen production, why is it so important? Because of carbon. The Amazon stores an enormous amount of carbon in its trees, soil, and other organic matter, about 150 billion tons of carbon. That carbon is currently locked away in wood and soil, not in the atmosphere where it would contribute to global warming. The Amazon is more like a carbon bank than a pair of lungs, storing carbon that would otherwise be heating our planet. But the Amazon is under threat. Deforestation, driven by logging, agriculture, and cattle ranching, is destroying the rainforest at an alarming rate. Thousands of square miles of Amazon rainforest are cut down every year. When the trees are burned or allowed to rot, all that stored carbon is released back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. At the same time, we're losing all the species that lived in that forest, many of them going extinct before we ever knew they existed. There are plants in the Amazon that might hold cures for diseases, compounds that could lead to new medicines, and we're losing them before we even discover them. Indigenous peoples who have lived in the Amazon for thousands of years are losing their homes and their way of life. The Amazon is approaching what scientists call a tipping point, a threshold beyond which the forest could collapse, unable to regenerate, turning into savanna or grassland. If that happens, it won't just be a disaster for South America. It will affect the entire planet, changing weather patterns, releasing enormous amounts of carbon, and eliminating a significant portion of Earth's biodiversity. But we're not here to feel anxious or worried. We're here to rest. So let's think instead about the Amazon as it has been for millions of years, a vast green cathedral of life, where the canopy blocks out most of the sunlight and the forest floor is in perpetual twilight, where it rains almost every day, and the air is thick with humidity and the scent of flowers and decay. where jaguars pad silently through the undergrowth, and macaws call from the treetops, and millions of species of insects go about their tiny lives in the leaves and bark and soil. The Amazon is still mostly there, still vast, still wild, still full of mystery and life. Temperate rainforests are another type of forest, much less famous than tropical rainforests, but equally magical. These forests grow in temperate zones with high rainfall, usually along coasts where moist ocean air drops its water on the land. The largest temperate rainforests are along the Pacific coast of North America, from northern California up through Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, and Alaska. These forests are dominated by conifers, evergreen trees with needles instead of leaves, trees like Sitka spruce, western hemlock, Douglas fir, and coast redwood. Temperate rainforests are misty, mossy places where everything is draped in green. The trees are covered in mosses and lichens. Ferns grow in the understory. Fallen logs, called nurse logs, are covered in moss and sprouting new trees, giving the impression that trees are growing directly out of other trees. The air in a temperate rainforest feels different, thicker somehow, laden with moisture, smelling of earth and evergreen and the sea. The old-growth temperate rainforests of the Pacific Northwest are some of the most productive forests on Earth in terms of biomass. These forests store more carbon per acre than any other forest type, including tropical rainforests. A single acre of old-growth temperate rainforest can contain over 1,000 tons of organic material, most of it in the form of living and dead trees. When you walk through an old-growth forest, you're surrounded by an almost unimaginable amount of wood. Trees 6 feet in diameter are common. Fallen logs can be 10 or 15 feet thick and hundreds of feet long, and they take centuries to decompose fully. These logs become ecosystems in themselves, home to salamanders, insects, small mammals, and countless microorganisms. Seeds germinate in the moss on top of the logs, and young trees send their roots down the sides of the log into the soil. Eventually, the log rots away completely, leaving a row of trees standing on what look like stilts, their roots forming an archway where the log used to be. Old-growth forests have a quality that's hard to describe if you've never experienced it. There's a silence, but it's not an empty silence. It's full of subtle sounds, wind in the high branches, the occasional call of a bird, water dripping from leaves, the distant sound of a stream. The light is dim and green, filtered through layers of canopy. The scale is overwhelming. You feel very small, standing among trees that were alive when your great-great-great-grandparents were born, trees that will still be alive long after you're gone. There's a sense of timelessness, of being in a place that exists outside of human time, operating on the slower rhythms of seasons and centuries. It's profoundly peaceful. Many people report feeling a sense of awe or even spirituality in old-growth forests, a feeling that they're in the presence of something greater than themselves. Take a slow, deep breath. Imagine the cool, moist air of the forest filling your lungs. Imagine the silence, the green light, the sense of ancient peace. Let that feeling settle into your body. Boreal forests, also called taiga, form a vast belt across the northern parts of North America, Europe, and Asia. The boreal forest is the largest terrestrial biome on Earth, covering about 11 million square miles, which is about 17% of Earth's land surface. That's larger than the Amazon rainforest. The boreal forest circles the entire planet in the northern hemisphere, spanning Alaska, Canada, Scandinavia, and Russia. These forests are different from tropical and temperate rainforests. They're colder, with long, harsh winters where temperatures can drop to -60 degrees Fahrenheit or even colder. Snow can be several feet deep and can stay on the ground for 6 or 7 months of the year. The growing season is short, sometimes only 3 or 4 months. But during that brief summer, the boreal forest comes alive. The trees, mostly conifers like spruce, fir, and pine, along with some deciduous trees like birch and aspen, photosynthesize frantically, taking advantage of the long summer days when the sun barely sets. The boreal forest is home to large mammals that have become almost mythical. Moose, caribou, wolves, bears, wolverines, lynx. In winter, these animals have to cope with extreme cold and deep snow. Some, like bears, hibernate. Others, like wolves and caribou, remain active, adapted to the cold with thick fur and strategies for finding food in the snow-covered landscape. The boreal forest is a harsh environment, but it's also a productive one. The short, intense growing season means that plants and animals must make the most of the warm months, reproducing and storing energy for the long winter ahead. The boreal forest plays a crucial role in Earth's climate system. Like the Amazon, it stores enormous amounts of carbon not just in trees, but also in the soil. The cold temperatures in the boreal forest slow decomposition, so organic matter accumulates in the soil, building up thick layers of partially decomposed plant material called peat. This peat stores carbon that would otherwise be in the atmosphere. The boreal forest also influences global weather patterns. The dark green of the coniferous trees absorbs sunlight, warming the region, while in winter, the snow-covered forest reflects sunlight back into space, helping to keep the region cold. Changes in the boreal forest, such as those caused by climate change, can have far-reaching effects on weather and climate around the world. Deciduous forests are forests where the trees lose their leaves in winter. These forests are common in temperate regions with distinct seasons, including much of Europe, eastern North America, and parts of Asia. The most famous deciduous forests are probably those of New England, known for their spectacular fall colors. In autumn, deciduous trees stop producing chlorophyll, the green pigment that captures sunlight for photosynthesis. As the chlorophyll breaks down, other pigments that were always present in the leaves but hidden by the green become visible. Carotenoids produce yellow and orange colors. Anthocyanins, which some trees produce in autumn in response to bright light and cold temperatures, create red and purple colors. The result is a landscape painted in golds, oranges, reds, and purples, a brief but spectacular display before the leaves fall and the trees enter their winter dormancy. The reason deciduous trees drop their leaves in winter is to conserve water. When the ground freezes, tree roots can't absorb water effectively. If the tree kept its leaves, it would continue to lose water through transpiration, the evaporation of water from leaf surfaces, but it wouldn't be able to replace that water. The tree would essentially die of dehydration. By dropping its leaves, the tree reduces water loss to almost nothing, allowing it to survive the winter. The fallen leaves accumulate on the forest floor, where they're broken down by decomposers, releasing nutrients back into the soil. In spring, when the ground thaws and water becomes available again, the tree grows new leaves and the cycle begins again. Deciduous forests in autumn are beautiful, but they're also poignant. There's something melancholy about watching the leaves fall, seeing the trees gradually go bare, knowing that winter is coming. But there's also something comforting in the knowledge that this is temporary, that the trees aren't dying, just sleeping, and that in spring they'll wake up again and grow new leaves. The cycle of the seasons in a deciduous forest is a reminder that change is natural, that loss is often temporary, and that rest is necessary for renewal. Forests create their own weather. This is most obvious in rainforests, where the trees recycle moisture through transpiration. A single large tree can transpire hundreds of gallons of water per day, releasing it into the air through its leaves. This moisture rises, cools, and falls as rain, often on the same forest that released it. The Amazon rainforest generates about half of its own rainfall this way. The rest comes from the Atlantic Ocean, but even that rain is influenced by the forest. As moist air from the ocean passes over the forest, the trees release moisture, making the air even more humid, creating conditions for even more rain. Remove the trees, and you remove a crucial part of the water cycle. This is one reason why deforestation often leads to regional drought. Without trees to recycle moisture, rainfall decreases, and what rain does fall quickly runs off, instead of being absorbed by the soil and released gradually by trees. Forests also moderate temperature. The canopy of a forest shades the ground, keeping the forest floor cooler in summer than the surrounding open land. The trees also release water vapor through transpiration, which cools the air through evaporation, the same way sweating cools your body. In winter, the forest canopy helps trap heat near the ground, making the forest floor warmer than open areas. If you've ever walked from an open field into a forest on a hot summer day, you felt this effect immediately. The forest is noticeably cooler, the air moister, the light softer. Forests create their own microclimates, and these microclimates support species that couldn't survive in the surrounding landscape. You're doing wonderfully. Let your body relax even more. Feel the coolness of the forest, the gentle moisture in the air, the soft cushion of moss beneath you. Let go of any tension you're holding. Mycorrhizal fungi, which we touched on earlier, are so important to forests that it's worth exploring them more deeply. The word mycorrhiza comes from Greek words meaning fungus root, and that's exactly what they are. Fungi that live in intimate association with plant roots. There are different types of mycorrhizae, but the most common in forests are ectomycorrhiza, where the fungal threads wrap around the outside of root tips, and arbuscular mycorrhizae, where the fungi actually penetrate the root cells. These relationships are ancient, dating back over 400 million years. When plants first moved from water onto land, they probably couldn't have done it without mycorrhizal fungi helping them absorb nutrients from the poor soils of the early continents. The mycorrhizal network in a forest is vast. The fungal threads, called hyphae, are incredibly thin, much thinner than plant roots, allowing them to penetrate tiny spaces in the soil and access water and nutrients that roots couldn't reach. A single cubic inch of forest soil can contain over 8 miles of fungal hyphae. Multiple these by the thousands or millions of cubic inches in a forest, and you begin to understand the scale of the network. It's been estimated that the total length of mycorrhizal hyphae in a single acre of forest soil could reach thousands of miles. This network connects individual trees to each other and to the soil in ways we're only beginning to understand. Scientists studying mycorrhizal networks have found that they're not just passive conduits for nutrients. The networks appear to be responsive, changing based on the needs of the plants and the availability of resources. When one tree is stressed by drought or disease, the network can redirect resources to help it. When a tree is doing well and has excess sugars, it can share them with trees that are struggling. Older trees, especially mother trees, are keystone individuals in these networks, connected to far more trees than younger individuals and playing a crucial role in maintaining the health of the entire forest. The death of a mother tree can have cascading effects throughout the forest, not just because of the physical gap it leaves, but because of the disruption to the mycorrhizal network. Some scientists go even further, suggesting that the mycorrhizal network might allow trees to recognize kin, to preferentially help their own offspring over unrelated trees. The evidence for this is still debated, but studies have shown that trees do seem to treat some trees differently than others through the network, sending more resources to some individuals than to others. Whether this constitutes recognition in any meaningful sense is a philosophical question as much as a scientific one. But it raises fascinating possibilities about what forests are and how they function. Are they collections of individuals, or are they better understood as superorganisms, forest-level entities, where individual trees are like cells in a body, connected and cooperative? The mushrooms you see in forests are the fruiting bodies of mycorrhizal and other fungi, the reproductive structures that release spores. The main body of the fungus is underground, the massive network of hyphae spreading through the soil. Some individual fungal colonies can be enormous and very old. One honey fungus colony in Oregon covers over 3 square miles and is estimated to be between 2,000 and 8,000 years old, making it one of the largest and oldest organisms on Earth. When you see mushrooms sprouting from the forest floor, you're seeing just a tiny, temporary part of a vast organism that might have been alive for millennia. Mushrooms are just one visible sign of the incredible fungal diversity in forests. There are fungi that specialize in decomposing wood, breaking down the tough lignin and cellulose that few other organisms can digest. There are parasitic fungi that attack living trees, sometimes killing them, sometimes just weakening them. There are fungi that live in symbiosis, not with roots, but with algae, forming lichens that grow on bark and rocks. There are fungi that trap and digest nematodes, tiny worms in the soil, providing nutrients to their plant partners. The fungal kingdom is incredibly diverse and incredibly important to forest ecosystems, yet it's also poorly understood. Scientists estimate that we've identified only about 5% of fungal species. The forest contains multitudes of fungi we've never seen or named, going about their lives in the soil and wood, recycling nutrients, connecting trees, maintaining the health of the ecosystem in ways we're only beginning to comprehend. Forest bathing, or Shinrin-yoku as it's called in Japan, where the practice originated, is the simple act of spending time in a forest, walking slowly, breathing deeply, taking in the forest through all your senses. It's not hiking or exercising. It's more meditative, more intentional. You're not trying to get anywhere. You're just being present in the forest, noticing the colors and shapes of leaves, the texture of bark, the play of light through the canopy, the sounds of birds and wind, the smell of earth and plants, the feel of the air on your skin. Research has shown that forest bathing has measurable health benefits. People who spend time in forests show reduced levels of cortisol, the stress hormone. Their blood pressure drops. Their heart rate slows. Their immune systems strengthen with increased activity of natural killer cells that fight infections and cancer. People report feeling calmer, more relaxed, less anxious and depressed after spending time in forests. Some of these benefits appear to come from compounds called phytoncides that trees release into the air. Phytoncides are part of a tree's defense system, chemicals that protect it from harmful insects and bacteria. When we breathe in these compounds, they seem to have beneficial effects on our physiology, boosting immune function and reducing stress. But the benefits of forest bathing aren't just biochemical. There's something psychologically and emotionally restorative about forests. They're visually complex but not overwhelming. The patterns of leaves and branches, the play of light and shadow, the various shades of green, all of this provides what psychologists call soft fascination, engaging your attention without demanding intense focus. This allows your directed attention, the kind of focus you use for work and daily tasks, to rest and recover. Forests also invoke a sense of being away, of having escaped from daily life and its demands. And there's often a sense of connection, of being part of something larger than yourself, part of the living world that existed long before you and will continue long after. Let that sense of peace wash over you now. You don't need to be in a physical forest to feel some of these benefits. Just imagining yourself in a forest, visualizing the green light and the quiet, can help calm your nervous system and prepare you for sleep. Trees have been sacred to humans throughout history. Almost every culture has myths and traditions involving trees. The Norse had Yggdrasil, the world tree, a massive ash tree that connected the 9 worlds of their cosmos. The Buddha achieved enlightenment while sitting under a Bodhi tree. Celtic Druids performed rituals in sacred groves. In many African traditions, certain trees are believed to house spirits or ancestors. Native American cultures across North America have traditions involving trees, from the Cherokee story of the first cedar tree to the Haida tradition of totem poles carved from western red cedar. Trees appear in the Bible, from the tree of knowledge and the tree of life in Genesis to the apocalyptic vision in Revelation of a tree whose leaves are for the healing of nations. Why are trees so universally sacred? Perhaps because they're the most obvious example of life persisting and growing, reaching toward the sky while being rooted in the earth, connecting those two realms. They provide shade, fruit, wood for building and burning, and they do it year after year, often for lifetimes far exceeding human lifespans. They mark the passage of seasons with their changing leaves or their pattern of growth. They're homes to birds and other creatures. They stand as silent witnesses to human events, watching generations of people be born, live, and die while the tree continues. There is something profoundly comforting about trees, something that speaks to something deep in the human psyche. A reminder of continuity, of life's persistence, of the deep time of the natural world that existed before humans and will continue after us. In some forests, you can still find individual trees that are culturally significant. Trees that have been protected for centuries because of their sacred status or historical importance. In Japan, some Shinto shrines have ancient trees wrapped with sacred ropes, marking them as dwelling places of kami, spirits. In England, the major oak in Sherwood Forest is over 1,000 years old and, according to legend, was a hiding place for Robin Hood. In California, the Methuselah Grove, where the oldest trees grow, is kept secret to protect the trees from vandalism. These trees are living links to the past, organisms that have witnessed centuries or millennia of history. To stand before them is to feel the weight of time, to be reminded that human lives are brief, but the world continues. We're moving past the 1-hour mark now. If you're still awake, that's perfectly fine. If you've drifted off already, that's perfect too. Let's continue our gentle journey through the forest, with no pressure, no urgency, just calm exploration. The Amazon rainforest, which we discussed earlier, has regions that flood seasonally. These varzea forests, as they're called, are inundated for several months each year when the rivers rise, sometimes by as much as 30 or 40 feet. During the flood season, the forest floor disappears beneath murky water, and fish swim among the tree trunks. Trees in varzea forests have adapted to these conditions. Their seeds are often designed to float and can germinate while floating. Some trees have developed breathing roots, specialized structures that allow roots to access oxygen even when submerged. Animals adapt too. Monkeys and birds move higher into the canopy. Jaguars, surprisingly good swimmers, navigate the flooded forest. Some fish species have evolved to eat fruits and seeds that fall from trees into the water, and they play an important role in dispersing those seeds to new locations. When the waters recede, the forest floor reappears, enriched by nutrient-rich sediments deposited by the floodwaters. Plants that were submerged for months resume growth. The cycle has been repeating for thousands of years, creating a unique ecosystem that's neither purely terrestrial nor purely aquatic, but something in between. The varzea forests are incredibly productive, supporting a rich diversity of life adapted to this rhythm of flood and ebb. They're also important fishing grounds for local communities, who time their fishing to the seasonal floods, knowing when and where different fish species will be most abundant. Mangrove forests are another type of forest that grows where land meets water, in this case in tropical and subtropical coastal areas where saltwater and freshwater mix. Mangroves are remarkable trees. They can tolerate salt levels that would kill most plants. Some mangrove species filter salt out of the water they absorb, excreting it through their leaves. Others store salt in older leaves which then drop off, taking the salt with them. Mangroves also deal with the challenge of growing in soft, waterlogged mud that doesn't provide stable support. Many mangrove species have developed prop roots or stilt roots, structures that arch out from the trunk and anchor in the mud, creating a stable framework that holds the tree above water even as tides rise and fall. Walking through a mangrove forest is a surreal experience. The trees seem to be standing on stilts, their roots creating a tangled maze above and below the water. At high tide, you might need a boat to navigate the forest, paddling between the prop roots. At low tide, you can walk on the exposed mud, though you have to watch your footing on the slippery surfaces and watch out for the roots. The air smells of salt and mud and decay. Crabs scuttle among the roots. Fish dart in the shallow water. Birds nest in the branches. Mangrove forests are nurseries for many marine species, providing shelter and food for juvenile fish and invertebrates that will later move to open ocean or coral reefs. Mangroves also protect coastlines from storms. The dense network of roots absorbs wave energy, reducing erosion and protecting inland areas from storm surge. During tsunamis and hurricanes, areas with healthy mangrove forests typically suffer less damage than areas where mangroves have been cleared. Mangroves also capture and store carbon very efficiently, storing it in their wood, roots, and in the thick layers of organic rich mud beneath them. Despite their importance, mangrove forests are disappearing rapidly, cleared for coastal development, shrimp farms, and other uses. About a quarter of the world's mangrove forests have been destroyed in the past 50 years. Protecting and restoring mangroves is not just about preserving a unique ecosystem, it's also about protecting human communities and fighting climate change. Cloud forests are mountain forests that exist in areas where clouds frequently envelop the forest, creating near-constant mist. These forests are found in tropical and subtropical mountains around the world, from the Andes to the Himalayas to the mountains of Central America and East Africa. Cloud forests are incredibly lush. The constant moisture from the clouds means that plants rarely experience water stress. Every surface is covered with mosses, lichens, ferns, and epiphytes, plants that grow on other plants. Trees in cloud forests are often shorter and more gnarled than lowland rainforest trees, twisted by wind and growing slowly in the cooler mountain temperatures. But what they lack in height, they make up for in complexity. A single tree in a cloud forest can host hundreds of other plant species growing on its branches, creating hanging gardens of ferns, orchids, bromeliads, and other epiphytes. The near-constant cloud cover in these forests means that light levels are low, creating a dim, ethereal atmosphere. Visibility is often limited by mist, giving the forest a mysterious quality, as if you're walking through a dream. The air is cool and very humid. Water drips constantly from leaves and mosses. Streams and waterfalls are common, fed by the moisture the forest captures from the clouds. The sound of water is ever present, a gentle background music that never stops. Cloud forests are home to many species found nowhere else on Earth. The isolation of mountain environments, combined with the unique conditions created by the clouds, has allowed species to evolve in these forests that are completely distinct from those in surrounding lowlands. Many species of frogs, salamanders, birds, and plants are endemic to specific cloud forests, found only in those particular mountains. The resplendent quetzal, one of the most beautiful birds in the world with its iridescent green plumage and long tail feathers, lives in Central American cloud forests. The mountain gorillas of Central Africa inhabit cloud forests on volcanic slopes. Golden toads, small bright orange frogs, once lived in the Monteverde cloud forest of Costa Rica, though they're now believed to be extinct, possibly due to climate change and disease. Cloud forests are particularly vulnerable to climate change. As temperatures rise, the cloud layer that sustains these forests can shift upward in elevation. Trees and other plants can't simply pick up and move. They're rooted in place. If the clouds move higher than the mountaintop, the forest loses its source of moisture and begins to die. Species adapted to cloud forest conditions have nowhere to go. They can't move down the mountain because it's too warm and dry. They can't move up because there's no more mountain. They're trapped in a shrinking habitat, and many face extinction. The loss of cloud forests would be a tragedy, not just for the species that live there, but for the millions of people downstream who depend on the steady flow of water from these forests. Cloud forests act like sponges, absorbing moisture from the clouds and releasing it gradually as springs and streams that feed rivers and provide water for agriculture and drinking. Let your breathing slow even more. Imagine yourself in that misty cloud forest, surrounded by green with cool moisture on your skin, with a quiet drip of water all around you. Feel the peace of that hidden, mysterious place. Forests play a crucial role in the water cycle beyond just creating rain through transpiration. Tree roots help water infiltrate into the soil rather than running off the surface. This reduces erosion and flooding and allows water to percolate down into aquifers, underground layers of water-bearing rock. These aquifers are crucial sources of fresh water for both natural ecosystems and human use. When forests are cleared, rainwater that would have been absorbed by the soil instead runs off quickly, carrying soil with it, causing erosion, silting up rivers, and leading to floods downstream. The loss of forest cover can turn a landscape from one where water is gradually absorbed and slowly released to one where rain causes flash floods followed by drought. Tree canopies also intercept rainfall, catching it on leaves and branches, where some of it evaporates before ever reaching the ground. This might seem wasteful, but it actually moderates the impact of heavy rain. Instead of heavy raindrops hitting the soil directly, potentially eroding it and compacting it, much of the rain is first caught by the canopy and then drips gently to the forest floor. The forest floor itself, covered in layers of leaves and other organic matter, acts like a sponge, absorbing water and releasing it slowly. Removing the forest changes the entire hydrology of a landscape, often with devastating consequences for both natural ecosystems and human communities downstream. The relationship between forests and water has been understood by many cultures throughout history. Sacred groves were often maintained around springs and along watersheds because people recognized that the health of the forest was connected to the availability of water. In some parts of India, traditional water management systems included protecting specific forests as sources of water for irrigation and drinking. In Japan, Satoyama landscapes maintained a mix of forest and agricultural land, with forests on hilltops and slopes protecting water sources. Modern science has confirmed what traditional knowledge already knew: forests and water are intimately connected, and protecting forests is essential for protecting water supplies. Bamboo forests are unique among forests. Bamboo is actually a type of grass, not a tree, but some bamboo species can grow to over 100 feet tall, creating forests that look and feel like any other forest. Bamboo is famous for its incredibly fast growth. Some species can grow 3 feet in a single day under optimal conditions. You can almost watch them grow if you're patient enough. This rapid growth is possible because bamboo doesn't have to build new cells from scratch each year like trees do. Instead, bamboo shoots grow from underground rhizomes, and the cells in the shoot are already formed, just compressed. As the shoot grows, these cells simply expand and fill with water, allowing for incredibly rapid vertical growth. Bamboo forests have a unique ecology. The dense growth and the fact that bamboo sheds its leaves throughout the year, creating a thick layer of mulch on the forest floor, means that few other plants can grow in bamboo forests. But animals thrive there. Giant pandas are the most famous bamboo forest inhabitants, with bamboo making up 99% of their diet. Despite being classified as carnivores, pandas have evolved to eat bamboo almost exclusively. Though their digestive systems aren't particularly efficient at processing it, which is why they have to eat enormous quantities, up to 40 pounds per day. Other animals, from red pandas to bamboo rats to various species of birds and insects, also depend on bamboo forests. Bamboo has another unusual characteristic. Many bamboo species have synchronized flowering cycles. All the bamboo plants of a particular species, sometimes across entire continents, will flower at the same time, then die. The interval between flowerings can be very long, sometimes 60, 80, or even 120 years. Scientists aren't entirely sure why bamboo evolved this strategy, but it might be a defense against seed predators. By flowering rarely and all at once, the bamboo produces such an enormous quantity of seeds that predators can't possibly eat them all, ensuring that some seeds survive to grow into new bamboo. But this mass flowering and death can be catastrophic for animals that depend on bamboo. When bamboo forests flower and die, pandas and other bamboo-dependent species face starvation, and their populations can crash. For humans, bamboo forests have been incredibly important throughout history. Especially in Asia, bamboo is used for construction, furniture, paper, musical instruments, kitchen utensils, and countless other purposes. Some bamboo species are edible, with bamboo shoots being a common food in many Asian cuisines. Bamboo can be harvested sustainably, as new shoots quickly replace harvested stems, making it an environmentally friendly material. In recent years, bamboo has gained popularity in the West as an eco-friendly alternative to wood and plastic. Pine forests, dominated by various species of pine trees, are common in many parts of the world, from the boreal regions to tropical mountains. Pine trees are conifers, meaning they produce cones and have needle-like leaves that stay on the tree year-round. Different pine species are adapted to different environments. Some pines thrive in cold northern climates. Others grow in warm, dry areas and are adapted to frequent fires. Longleaf pine forests once covered much of the southeastern United States, maintained by frequent low-intensity fires that would burn through the understory without killing the mature pines, which have thick, fire-resistant bark. Fire-adapted pine forests are fascinating ecosystems. Many pine species have serotinous cones, which are sealed with resin and only open to release their seeds when exposed to the heat of a fire. This means that fire, far from being destructive to the forest, is actually necessary for regeneration. After a fire burns through a pine forest, the serotinous cones open, seeds rain down on the newly cleared ground, and a new generation of pines begins to grow. Without fire, these forests become choked with understory vegetation. Dead wood accumulates, and when fire eventually does occur, it's much hotter and more destructive, killing even the fire-resistant mature trees. For much of the 20th century, fire suppression was the standard approach to forest management in many parts of the world, especially in the United States. Every fire was fought and extinguished as quickly as possible. This seemed like a good idea, protecting both forests and human property. But it had unintended consequences. Without regular fires to clear out undergrowth and dead wood, fuel accumulated in fire-adapted forests. When fires did occur, they were much more intense than the natural fires these forests evolved with, hot enough to kill mature trees and sterilize the soil. In recent decades, forest managers have begun to recognize the importance of fire in many forest ecosystems and have started using controlled burns to reduce fuel loads and restore more natural fire regimes. It's a return to practices that indigenous peoples used for thousands of years, using fire as a tool to manage forests and create the landscape patterns they desired. The sound of wind in pine trees is distinctive, a rushing, whispering sound different from the rustling of deciduous leaves. There's something deeply calming about that sound, lying in a pine forest on a bed of fallen needles, looking up through the branches at the sky, listening to the wind. Pine needles on the forest floor create a soft, aromatic carpet. The scent of pine resin fills the air, especially on warm days. That scent, like the phytoncides we discussed earlier, seems to have a calming effect on humans, reducing stress and promoting relaxation. You're doing so well. We're well into our journey now, moving deeper into the forest, discovering its secrets. Let your body sink even further into relaxation. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. Just rest. Eucalyptus forests are dominant in Australia, where eucalyptus trees, also called gum trees, make up a large percentage of the native forest. There are over 700 species of eucalyptus, ranging from small shrubs to some of the tallest trees on Earth. Mountain ash eucalyptus in Tasmania can reach heights of over 300 feet, rivaling redwoods. Eucalyptus trees have a number of adaptations that make them successful in Australia's often dry, fire-prone climate. Their leaves hang vertically rather than horizontally, reducing the surface area exposed to intense midday sun and reducing water loss. Many eucalyptus species can resprout from their trunks or roots after being burned or cut down, allowing them to survive fires that would kill other trees. Eucalyptus leaves contain oils that are flammable, and when eucalyptus forests burn, they can burn very intensely. This seems counterintuitive. Why would a tree evolve to be more flammable? But the strategy makes sense when you consider that eucalyptus trees are adapted to survive fire, while many competing plant species are not. By encouraging hot fires, eucalyptus trees eliminate competition and create conditions where their own seeds, which are resistant to fire, can germinate and grow without competition. It's a harsh strategy, but it's been successful for millions of years. The eucalyptus oils that make the trees flammable also make them aromatic. On a hot day in a eucalyptus forest, The air shimmers with volatile oils evaporating from the leaves, creating a distinctive smell and sometimes even a blue haze that hangs over the forest. These oils have antimicrobial and insect-repelling properties, protecting the tree from pests and diseases. Humans have found uses for eucalyptus oil as well, using it in medicines, cleaning products, and as an insect repellent. Koalas are the most famous inhabitants of eucalyptus forests. These marsupials feed almost exclusively on eucalyptus leaves, which are tough, fibrous, and toxic to most animals. Koalas have evolved specialized digestive systems that can break down the toxins and extract nutrients from eucalyptus leaves, though the process is so inefficient that koalas have to sleep up to 20 hours a day to conserve energy. Each koala has preferences for certain eucalyptus species and will travel through the forest selecting particular trees with the most palatable leaves. Despite their cute appearance, koalas are solitary territorial animals, and males mark their territories with scent and loud bellowing calls during breeding season. Eucalyptus forests are home to many other unique Australian animals as well. Various species of possums live in the canopy, feeding on eucalyptus flowers and leaves. Cockatoos and other parrots gather in flocks, their raucous calls echoing through the forest. Kookaburras, large kingfishers famous for their laughing calls, perch on branches watching for prey. On the forest floor, echidnas forage for ants and termites, and wombats dig their extensive burrow systems. At night, the forests come alive with nocturnal animals, sugar gliders gliding from tree to tree, greater gliders using their tail as a parachute, owls hunting, and dingoes patrolling their territories. Teak forests in Southeast Asia have been economically important for centuries. Teak wood is extremely durable, resistant to rot, termites, and moisture, making it valuable for shipbuilding, furniture, and construction. Natural teak forests grow in tropical areas with distinct wet and dry seasons, particularly in India, Myanmar, Thailand, and Indonesia. Teak trees are deciduous, dropping their leaves during the dry season and growing new ones when the rains return. This seasonal rhythm is crucial to teak's properties. The alternating wet and dry seasons create growth rings in the wood, similar to those in temperate trees, and these growth rings contribute to the wood's strength and durability. The high value of teak has led to extensive logging of natural teak forests, and many of these forests have been degraded or destroyed. In response, teak plantations have been established in many tropical countries. While plantations can produce teak wood and reduce pressure on natural forests, plantation forests lack the biodiversity and ecological complexity of natural forests. A natural teak forest contains hundreds of plant species and provides habitat for elephants, tigers, various deer species, and countless birds, insects, and other animals. A teak plantation is essentially a monoculture, with rows of genetically similar teak trees and little else. The ecological difference between a natural forest and a plantation is vast. Even if both contain the same species of tree, this raises important questions about what we mean by forest and what we're trying to preserve or restore when we talk about forest conservation. Is a plantation a forest? It has trees, certainly. But is it functionally the same as a natural forest? Most ecologists would say no. Natural forests have developed over centuries or millennia with complex relationships between species, with natural disturbance regimes like fires or storms that create gaps and allow for regeneration, with a diversity of tree ages from seedlings to ancient giants. Plantations, by contrast, are usually even-aged, with trees all planted at the same time, managed to maximize timber production, with understory cleared to reduce competition. They can provide some benefits like carbon storage and timber production, but they're poor substitutes for natural forests in terms of biodiversity and ecosystem function. The same issue arises with reforestation efforts. Planting trees is generally a good thing, but simply planting millions of trees doesn't necessarily create a healthy forest. The species chosen, the density of planting, whether a diversity of species is used or just one, whether the planting includes understory plants or just trees, whether the site is managed after planting, or left alone. All of these factors affect whether the planted trees eventually develop into something resembling a natural forest or remain a tree farm. The best reforestation efforts try to mimic natural forest structure and composition, using diverse native species, including plants of different ages and sizes, and allowing natural processes to shape the developing forest. We're past the 2-hour mark now. You've been listening for a while, or perhaps you've been sleeping for a while and these words are just washing over you in dreams. Either way, you're exactly where you should be. Let's continue our gentle wandering through the forest. Cork oak forests in the Mediterranean region of Europe and North Africa are managed for cork production. Cork is the bark of the cork oak tree, and it can be harvested without killing the tree. Every 9 to 12 years, when the bark has grown thick enough, it's carefully stripped from the trunk and major branches. The tree is left alive with its inner bark intact, and it gradually grows a new layer of cork. Individual cork oak trees can be harvested many times over their lifespan, which can be 200 years or more. This makes cork oak forests a good example of sustainable forestry, providing economic benefits while maintaining forest ecosystems. Cork oak forests are found primarily in Portugal, Spain, southern France, Italy, and North Africa. These forests are maintained in a semi-natural state, with grazing animals like pigs and cattle foraging under the trees, with understory plants providing habitat for various wildlife species. The cork oak forests of the Iberian Peninsula are important habitat for the Iberian lynx, one of the world's most endangered cats, as well as for Spanish imperial eagles, black storks, and many other species. The traditional management of these forests, harvesting cork while maintaining the overall forest structure, has allowed both economic use and conservation of biodiversity. However, cork oak forests face threats. The increasing use of plastic and metal screw caps on wine bottles instead of traditional cork has reduced demand for cork, making it less economically viable to maintain cork oak forests. Some forests have been converted to other uses. Climate change is also a threat, as cork oaks are adapted to the Mediterranean climate with its wet winters and dry summers, and changes in rainfall patterns could stress the trees. Conservation organizations are working to maintain cork oak forests by encouraging the use of natural cork, promoting cork oak products beyond wine bottle stoppers, and highlighting the ecological and cultural importance of these unique forest systems. Dipterocarp forests in Southeast Asia are among the most diverse forests on Earth. Dipterocarps are a family of trees that dominate the canopy in lowland and hill forests from India to the Philippines. Individual dipterocarp trees can grow to enormous sizes, over 200 feet tall, with massive, buttressed trunks. The name dipterocarp means two-winged fruit, referring to the winged seeds that spin as they fall, allowing them to disperse away from the parent tree. Dipterocarp forests are incredibly rich in species. A single hectare of dipterocarp forest can contain over 200 tree species. This is comparable to the diversity found in Amazon rainforests and far exceeds the diversity of temperate forests. These forests are home to orangutans, the only great apes found in Asia, who spend most of their lives in the canopy, traveling from tree to tree, feeding on fruit, leaves, and bark. Orangutans are known for their intelligence and their use of tools, using sticks to extract insects from tree bark or to help them access fruit. They build nests in trees each night for sleeping, constructing a new nest nearly every day. Female orangutans with infants are often seen, the infant clinging to the mother as she moves through the forest, learning which trees have fruit, and how to navigate the complex three-dimensional environment of the canopy. Dipterocarp forests face severe threats from logging and conversion to palm oil plantations. The wood of dipterocarp trees is valuable, and the forests have been heavily logged throughout the region. After logging, the land is often converted to agriculture, particularly oil palm plantations. Palm oil is an incredibly productive crop, yielding more oil per acre than any other oil crop, and it's used in a huge range of products from food to cosmetics to biofuels. But the expansion of palm oil plantations has come at an enormous cost to biodiversity. An oil palm plantation is a monoculture, and it supports only a tiny fraction of the species that lived in the dipterocarp forest it replaced. Orangutans, elephants, tigers, and countless other species have lost vast areas of habitat to palm oil expansion. The situation is complex because palm oil production provides livelihoods for millions of people in Southeast Asia, and the crop itself is not inherently bad. The problem is the unsustainable way it's often produced, clearing natural forests rather than using already degraded land, using methods that pollute waterways and emit large amounts of carbon dioxide from drained peatlands. Sustainable palm oil production is possible, and certification schemes exist to identify palm oil produced in more environmentally responsible ways. But enforcement is difficult, and the economic incentives for expanding production remain strong. The future of dipterocarp forests and the species that depend on them remains uncertain. Mist forests, similar to cloud forests but generally at lower elevations, are found in coastal areas where fog regularly rolls in from the ocean. The Pacific coast of North America has extensive mist forests, where summer fog is created when warm inland air meets cool ocean water. This fog then moves inland, enveloping coastal forests in moisture. Trees in these forests have adapted to capture water from fog. Needles and leaves capture tiny water droplets from the fog, which then drip down to the ground, effectively pulling water out of the air. This fog drip can amount to several inches of water during the dry summer months, supplementing rainfall and helping trees survive the Mediterranean climate pattern of dry summers and wet winters. Redwoods are particularly efficient at capturing fog water. Scientists estimate that redwood forests can capture up to 40% of their moisture needs from fog. This creates a positive feedback loop. The forest captures water from fog, which helps the trees grow tall and healthy, which creates more surface area to capture more fog. Remove the trees and you not only lose the forest, but also reduce the amount of fog water being captured, which can affect streams, groundwater, and downstream water supplies. The forests create the conditions that sustain them, and removing them can trigger cascading changes in the local hydrology and climate. Let your mind wander through these misty forests. Feel the cool fog on your skin, see the gray-green light filtered through layers of mist and leaves, smell the rich scent of wet earth and evergreen trees. Let that coolness and quietness sink into you, calming your thoughts, slowing your breathing. Cypress swamps in the southeastern United States are forests that grow in standing water. Bald cypress trees, despite being conifers, are deciduous, dropping their needles in winter. They're adapted to grow with their roots completely submerged for months at a time. Cypress trees develop specialized structures called knees, woody projections that grow up from the roots and stick out of the water. Scientists aren't entirely sure what function cypress knees serve, but they might help anchor the tree in soft swamp mud, or they might help the roots access oxygen when they're submerged. Cypress swamps have a haunting beauty, especially in winter when the trees are bare. The gray trunks rise from dark water, draped with Spanish moss, which isn't actually moss but an epiphytic flowering plant related to pineapples. Spanish moss hangs in long gray-green strands from branches, creating a Gothic atmosphere. The water in cypress swamps is often stained dark brown by tannins from decaying plant material, creating a perfect mirror that reflects the trees and sky. Alligators bask on logs or glide silently through the water. Herons and egrets wade in the shallows. In spring and summer, the swamps come alive with the sounds of frogs and insects. Cypress swamps provide important ecological services. They act as natural water filters, trapping sediments and pollutants. They store water during heavy rains, reducing downstream flooding. They provide habitat for many species, including several that are threatened or endangered. And like other wetlands, they store large amounts of carbon in the waterlogged soils where decomposition is slow. Despite their ecological importance, cypress swamps have been extensively drained and converted to agriculture or development. Many of the cypress swamps that remain are second growth, having been logged in the 19th and early 20th centuries when old-growth cypress wood was highly valued for its durability. The massive old-growth cypress trees, some of which were over 1,000 years old and 30 feet in circumference, are mostly gone, though a few small stands remain. Protected in parks and preserves, aspen forests in the Rocky Mountains of North America are famous for their autumn colors. Quaking aspen, named for the way their leaves tremble in even the slightest breeze, turn brilliant gold in autumn, creating entire mountainsides painted in shimmering yellow. The effect is breathtaking, especially when set against the deep blue of autumn skies and the dark green of surrounding conifer forests. The trembling of aspen leaves is caused by their flattened leaf stems, called petioles, which are oriented perpendicular to the leaf blade. This allows the leaves to twist and flutter with the slightest air movement, creating a constant rustling sound that gives aspen groves their distinctive auditory signature. Aspen trees are remarkable for their ability to reproduce clonally. While aspens can reproduce from seeds, they more commonly spread by sending up new stems from their root systems. What looks like a grove of individual aspen trees is often actually a single organism, one enormous root system sending up thousands of genetically identical stems. The largest known aspen clone, called Pando, which we mentioned earlier when discussing ancient organisms, covers over 100 acres in Utah and consists of over 40,000 individual stems, all connected by a single root system. This clone is estimated to weigh about 13 million pounds, making it possibly the heaviest organism on Earth, as well as one of the oldest. Aspen forests are important for many animal species. In winter, elk and deer browse on aspen bark, sometimes creating browse lines where all the bark has been stripped from trunks up to a certain height. Beavers prefer aspen wood for building their dams and lodges and also eat the bark and leaves. Many bird species nest in aspen groves, excavating cavities in the soft wood or using natural cavities created by broken branches. The thick understory vegetation that often grows in aspen forests provides cover for many small mammals. When aspen groves are lost, either due to fire suppression that allows conifers to take over or due to overgrazing that prevents young aspen stems from growing, the species that depend on aspen suffer. Beech forests are common in temperate regions of Europe, Asia, and eastern North America. European beech creates dense forests where little light reaches the forest floor, resulting in relatively sparse understory vegetation but thick layers of fallen beech leaves. American beech has smoother, lighter gray bark than European beech and often hosts beech bark disease, a combination of a scale insect and a fungus that can kill trees. Beech trees produce nuts called beech nuts or beech mast, which are important food for many animals including deer, bear, wild boar in Europe, and numerous bird species. Beech mast production is cyclical, with heavy mast years followed by years of poor production. This variability affects the populations of animals that depend on beech nuts, with populations booming in mast years and declining in lean years. Beech forests have long been culturally important in Europe. The smooth gray bark of beech trees has been used for centuries as a surface for carving names and messages. Walk through an old beech forest in Europe, and you might find initials and dates carved decades or even a century ago, slowly expanding as the tree grows but still legible. The German word for beech is Bushi, which is related to the German word Buch, meaning book, because beech wood was used for writing tablets before paper became common. There's something poetic about that connection. The tree whose bark invited writing also lending its name to the concept of books and writing itself. We're moving toward the 3-hour mark, deep into our nighttime journey through forests around the world. Your breathing should be very slow and deep by now. If thoughts arise, let them pass like leaves floating on a forest stream. You don't need to hold on to anything. Just let go and drift. Oak forests are found throughout the northern hemisphere and are among the most ecologically important temperate forests. There are hundreds of oak species, ranging from the massive valley oaks of California that can live over 500 years to the smaller scrub oaks of the Mediterranean. Oaks are keystone species, meaning they have disproportionate importance to their ecosystems. A single oak tree can support hundreds of species of insects, many of them specialized to feed only on oaks. These insects in turn support birds, bats, and other predators. Acorns, the nuts produced by oaks, are crucial food for many mammals including deer, wild boar, bears, squirrels, and mice. In years of heavy acorn production, populations of these animals boom. In lean years, they struggle. The relationship between oaks and the animals that disperse their acorns is an example of coevolution. Acorns are large, heavy seeds that can't be dispersed by wind or water. Instead, oaks rely on animals to move their seeds. Squirrels and jays collect acorns and cache them for later consumption, often burying them in the ground. Many of these caches are forgotten or the animal dies before retrieving them, and the buried acorns sprout, growing into new oak trees far from the parent tree. The trees have essentially recruited animals as their dispersal agents, providing food in exchange for seed dispersal services. The animals have evolved behaviors like caching that help them survive lean times, and in the process, they plant forests. Oak wood has been valued throughout history for its strength and durability. Many historic buildings in Europe have oak timber frames that have lasted for centuries. Ships were traditionally built from oak because of its resistance to rot and its strength. The Royal Navy's fleet in the Age of Sail consumed enormous quantities of oak, and Britain's oak forests were heavily depleted to build ships. Each large warship required thousands of mature oak trees. The need for ship timber drove forest management policies and even international conflicts, as control of oak forests was strategically important. Oak forests also hold cultural and mythological significance. The ancient Greeks associated oak with Zeus, king of the gods. Celtic Druids held rituals in oak groves. In Norse mythology, oak was associated with Thor, god of thunder. The symbolism of the oak, representing strength, endurance, and nobility, appears throughout European culture. In England, the royal oak is a symbol of the monarchy, commemorating Charles II hiding in an oak tree to escape parliamentary forces. Individual historic oaks have become landmarks and gathering places, some with their own names and legends stretching back centuries. Birch forests are common in northern temperate and boreal regions. Birch trees are recognizable by their distinctive white or silver bark, which peels in papery layers. This bark is not only beautiful, but also highly functional. The white color reflects sunlight, helping prevent the trunk from overheating on sunny winter days when the ground is frozen and the tree can't transport water to cool itself. The bark also contains compounds that make it waterproof and resistant to decay, which is why birch bark has been used traditionally for making canoes. Roofing material and containers, paper birch, found across northern North America, has bark that was used by Native American peoples for countless purposes. Birch bark canoes were marvels of engineering, lightweight but strong, flexible but durable, capable of carrying heavy loads through rapids and across lakes. The bark was harvested in large sheets in spring when it separates easily from the tree, then shaped over a wooden frame and sewn together with spruce roots, with seams sealed with spruce pitch. These canoes were so well designed that European explorers and fur traders quickly adopted them, recognizing their superiority to European boat designs for navigating the rivers and lakes of the interior. Birch trees are pioneer species, among the first to colonize disturbed areas after fires, logging, or other disturbances. They grow quickly, tolerate poor soils, and can thrive in full sunlight. In doing so, they modify the environment, creating shade and improving soil conditions, eventually making it possible for other species to establish themselves. Over time, if there are no further disturbances, longer-lived species like spruce and fir may grow up through the birch canopy and eventually replace the birches. This process of ecological succession, where one community of plants gradually gives way to another, happens in forests around the world and is one of the fundamental processes shaping forest composition and structure. Watching a birch forest in autumn is a special experience. The leaves turn bright yellow, creating a golden canopy that glows when backlit by the sun. The white trunks stand out starkly against the yellow leaves and the darkening autumn sky. There is a particular quality of light in birch forests in autumn, a soft golden glow that seems to suffuse everything. Stand still in a birch forest on a calm autumn day, and you can hear the leaves falling, a gentle rustling as they detach and spiral down, settling on the forest floor to join the growing carpet of gold. Alder forests grow in wet areas along streams and rivers and in poorly drained soils where other trees struggle. Alders have a special relationship with nitrogen-fixing bacteria that live in nodules on their roots. These bacteria can take nitrogen from the air and convert it into forms that plants can use, essentially fertilizing the soil. Alders growing along streams improve water quality by taking up excess nutrients and by stabilizing stream banks with their roots, preventing erosion. The leaves that fall from alders into streams are food for aquatic insects, which in turn are food for fish. Salmon streams in the Pacific Northwest are often lined with alders, and the health of the alder forests is connected to the health of the salmon populations. In Hawaiian forests, you'll find trees found nowhere else on Earth. Hawaii's isolation in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles from the nearest continent, means that the plants and animals that colonize the islands evolved in isolation, developing into unique species. The Hawaiian honey creepers, a family of birds that evolved from a single finch ancestor that reached Hawaii millions of years ago, diversified into over 50 species, each with different beak shapes and feeding strategies adapted to different flowers and food sources. Sadly, many honey creeper species are now extinct, and most of the remaining species are endangered, victims of habitat loss, introduced predators, and diseases carried by introduced mosquitoes. Hawaiian forests themselves have been drastically altered. Lowland forests were largely cleared for agriculture. Introduced plants have invaded many remaining forests. Feral pigs, descended from animals brought by Polynesian settlers and later by Europeans, root up the forest floor, creating puddles where mosquitoes breed. The unique lobelioids, plants related to the familiar garden lobelia, but evolved into trees and shrubs with spectacular flowers, are critically endangered. The koa tree, a native acacia with beautiful wood that was traditionally used for canoes and is now prized for musical instruments and furniture, has been heavily harvested and is declining in many areas. Conservation efforts are working to protect and restore Hawaiian forests, but the challenges are immense, and some losses are irreversible. Species that went extinct before their ecology was studied remain mysteries, their roles in the forest ecosystem forever unknown. Subtropical forests, found in regions like the southeastern United States, southern China, and parts of South America and Australia, are characterized by mild winters and hot, humid summers. These forests have characteristics of both temperate and tropical forests, with a mix of deciduous and evergreen trees, high diversity, and lush understory vegetation. Live oaks, which are evergreen despite being oaks, are characteristic trees of southeastern U.S. subtropical forests, along with magnolias, palms, and various pines. Spanish moss, which we mentioned earlier in relation to cypress swamps, also drapes from trees in these forests, giving them a distinctive appearance. Subtropical forests in China, particularly in the mountainous regions, are incredibly diverse and have been important sources of medicinal plants used in traditional Chinese medicine for thousands of years. Many of these forests have been heavily impacted by centuries of human use, but significant areas remain, protecting species found nowhere else. The giant panda's habitat is in these subtropical forests, in mountainous areas where bamboo grows in the understory of mixed forests. Conservation efforts for giant pandas have focused on protecting and connecting forest patches, creating corridors that allow pandas to move between areas and maintain genetic diversity in their populations. The Atlantic forest of Brazil, distinct from the Amazon rainforest, is a subtropical and tropical forest that once covered much of Brazil's eastern coast. This forest is a biodiversity hotspot with extremely high numbers of endemic species found nowhere else. The golden lion tamarin, a small, bright orange primate, is found only in the Atlantic forest. Hundreds of bird species, including many spectacular tanagers and hummingbirds, are endemic to this forest. Countless plant species, including many orchids and bromeliads, are found nowhere else. But the Atlantic forest has been reduced to less than 12% of its original extent, cleared for agriculture, logging, and urban development. São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, two of the largest cities in South America, are located in what was once Atlantic forest. The remaining fragments of forest are mostly small and isolated, making it difficult for species to maintain viable populations. Conservation in the Atlantic forest focuses on protecting remaining fragments, restoring degraded areas to create corridors between fragments, and working with private landowners to protect forest on their property. Brazil's forest code requires that private landowners in the Atlantic forest region maintain a certain percentage of their land as forest, though enforcement has been inconsistent. Despite the challenges, there are success stories. The golden lion tamarin was on the brink of extinction in the 1970s, with only about 200 individuals remaining. But intensive conservation efforts, including captive breeding, reintroduction, and habitat protection, have increased the population to over 3,000. It's a reminder that while the situation is dire for many forests and species, dedicated conservation efforts can make a difference. Let yourself sink even deeper into rest. We're in the final stretch of our journey now, wandering through the last forests before we find our place to rest for the night. Riparian forests, the forests that grow along rivers and streams, are disproportionately important relative to their size. While they occupy a small percentage of the landscape, they provide crucial habitat for many species, including many that don't live in the forests themselves, but depend on them for food or shelter. Riparian forests filter pollutants from water running off the surrounding landscape before it enters streams, improving water quality. They stabilize stream banks, preventing erosion. They provide shade that keeps water temperatures cool, which is crucial for cold water fish like salmon and trout. They drop leaves and woody debris into streams, providing food and habitat structure for aquatic insects and fish. Riparian forests are also crucial migration corridors for many species, providing strips of forest habitat that animals can follow through landscapes that might otherwise be dominated by agriculture or development. Birds migrating along river valleys use riparian forests as stopover habitat, resting and feeding before continuing their journeys. In arid regions, riparian forests are oases, sometimes the only forested habitat for miles, supporting concentrations of wildlife that far exceed what the size of the forest alone would suggest. Many riparian forests have been degraded or destroyed. Rivers have been straightened and channelized, eliminating the meanders and side channels where riparian vegetation thrives. Livestock grazing in riparian areas has removed the vegetations and compacted soils. Water has been extracted for irrigation, lowering water tables and stressing riparian trees. Dams have altered flow regimes, eliminating the floods that many riparian species depend on for regeneration. Restoring riparian forests often involves fencing out livestock, replanting native trees, removing invasive species, and sometimes recontouring stream banks to more natural shapes. These restoration efforts can have rapid and dramatic benefits for wildlife, water quality, and stream health. Old-growth forests, regardless of forest type, have characteristics that distinguish them from younger forests. They have large old trees, often with dead tops or broken branches. They have standing dead trees called snags, which provide habitat for cavity-nesting birds and homes for various mammals. They have large fallen logs in various stages of decay, which, as we've discussed, serve as nurse logs for new trees and habitat for countless organisms. They have a multi-layered canopy with gaps created by fallen trees, allowing light to reach different levels of the forest. They have accumulated deep soils rich in organic matter. All of these characteristics develop over long periods of time, often centuries, and they can't be replicated quickly. Old-growth forests are increasingly rare. Most forests have been logged at some point, resetting their ecological age, even if trees have since regrown. In the Pacific Northwest of the United States, less than 10% of the original old-growth forest remains. Most of what was logged was never replanted with the intention of becoming old growth again. It was converted to tree plantations managed for timber production on rotation cycles of 40 to 80 years. In Europe, old-growth forests are even rarer, with most forests having been managed for centuries and few areas allowed to develop old-growth characteristics. The species that depend specifically on old-growth characteristics are thus increasingly threatened. The spotted owl in the Pacific Northwest requires old-growth forest habitat and has declined dramatically as old growth has been logged. Many species of fungi, lichens, and invertebrates are found only in old-growth forests, and as those forests disappear, so do those species. There's an ethical question underlying old-growth forest conservation. Do we have the right to cut down trees that are hundreds or thousands of years old? Living beings that predate European settlement of the Americas, that were alive when Vikings were exploring the North Atlantic, that have stood through centuries of history? How do we weigh the economic value of the timber against the ecological and intrinsic value of the living forest? Some of the most important recent findings in forest ecology have come from long-term studies in old-growth forests. The Hubbard Brook Experimental Forest in New Hampshire has been studied since 1963, with researchers tracking every drop of water and every nutrient that enters and leaves the watershed. This long-term data has revealed how forests recover from disturbances, how they respond to acid rain and other pollutants, and how they're changing in response to climate change. The H.J. Andrews Experimental Forest in Oregon has similar long-term studies of Pacific Northwest forests. These decades-long studies are revealing patterns and processes that would be invisible in shorter studies, showing us how forests operate on timescales of decades and centuries. Sacred groves, forests that are protected for religious or cultural reasons, exist in many cultures around the world. In India, sacred groves are common, with local communities protecting specific forest patches, often surrounding temples or associated with local deities. These groves have often preserved species and forest types that have disappeared from surrounding areas. In West Africa, sacred groves protect forests associated with traditional religions, serving as refuges for wildlife and medicinal plants. In Japan, forests surrounding Shinto shrines are protected, with some containing ancient trees that have never been cut. These sacred groves demonstrate that forest conservation is not a modern or Western concept, but has existed in various forms across cultures for centuries or millennia. The spiritual significance of forests appears across human cultures and throughout history. Forests are seen as places of mystery, transformation, and connection to something beyond the everyday world. In many myths and fairy tales, the forest is where protagonists go to face challenges, encounter supernatural beings, or discover their true selves. The forest is liminal space, neither civilized nor completely wild, a place where normal rules might not apply. This symbolism reflects real experiences many people have in forests. Feelings of being in a special place, of time moving differently, of being connected to nature in ways that aren't possible in human-dominated landscapes. Even for people who don't attribute spiritual significance to forests, spending time in forests can be profoundly meaningful. There's a sense of perspective that comes from being among trees that have lived longer than you, that will likely outlive you. There's humility in recognizing yourself as just one small part of a vast web of life. There's peace in the quiet, the filtered light, the sense of being held by the forest. These experiences are valuable in themselves, beyond any ecological or economic considerations. They nourish something in the human soul that modern life often neglects. We're approaching the 3.5-hour mark, nearing the end of our journey. But there are a few more things to explore, a few more wonders to discover in the forest before we rest. The future of forests is uncertain. Climate change is altering temperature and precipitation patterns, stressing forests adapted to historical conditions. Droughts are becoming more severe and prolonged in many regions. Pest outbreaks are intensifying, with insects like bark beetles killing millions of trees across western North America. Wildfires are becoming larger and more severe, particularly in regions where fire suppression has allowed fuel to accumulate. Diseases are spreading, sometimes introduced accidentally from other continents, devastating tree species that have no evolutionary resistance. But there are also reasons for hope. Forest area is actually increasing in some parts of the world, particularly in Europe and parts of North America, as marginal agricultural land is abandoned and forests naturally regenerate. Reforestation efforts are planting billions of trees worldwide. Protected areas are expanding, and some degraded forests are recovering. Indigenous peoples, who manage an estimated 22% of global forest area, are increasingly recognized as effective forest stewards, and their land rights are being strengthened in some countries. There's growing recognition that forests are valuable not just for timber, but for the countless other services they provide: carbon storage, water purification, biodiversity conservation, recreation, and spiritual renewal. The challenge is to find ways for human societies to coexist with forests sustainably, taking what we need without undermining the forest's ability to regenerate and maintain their ecological functions. This requires changes in how we value forests, moving beyond seeing them primarily as sources of timber to recognizing their many values. It requires changes in consumption patterns, reducing demand for products that drive deforestation. It requires political will to enforce forest protection laws and to make the long-term investments in forest conservation and restoration that won't pay off for decades. It requires respecting the rights and knowledge of indigenous peoples and forest-dependent communities. And it requires recognizing that protecting forests isn't just about preserving nature for nature's sake, though that's important enough. It's also about protecting the systems that regulate our climate, produce our water, house countless species, including some that may hold cures for diseases, and provide the green spaces where humans can find peace and renewal. If you plant a tree today, it might live for decades, centuries, or even millennia, depending on the species. Long after you're gone, that tree might still be standing, providing shade, cleaning air, storing carbon, offering shelter to birds and insects. In a world that often seems focused on the immediate, on quarterly profits and news cycles measured in hours, there's something profoundly hopeful about planting a tree. It's an act of faith in the future, a gift to people and beings you'll never meet. It's recognition that our actions today shape the world decades and centuries from now. Every forest you've ever walked through was shaped by countless factors: the climate and soil, the species of trees and their interactions, the animals that disperse seeds and pollinate flowers, the fungi that network underground, the insects that eat and are eaten, the microbes that cycle nutrients, the fires that cleared and renewed, the storms that toppled trees and created gaps, and yes, the humans who have lived in and around forests for thousands of generations, shaping them through their use and care or their neglect. Forests are not static. They're dynamic, constantly changing, responding to disturbances, regenerating, succeeding through different stages. A forest is not a thing, but a process, a community constantly in flux, but with continuity, with threads that connect the past to the present to the future. When you walk in a forest, you're walking through time. The leaves on the ground are this year's growth, already beginning to decay. The herbs and shrubs in the understory might be a few years old. Small trees might be decades old. The canopy trees might be centuries old. Fallen logs might have been growing when your great-grandparents were born. The soil itself contains organic matter from trees that fell generations ago. And the forest as a community, the particular mix of species and the relationships between them, might have been developing for thousands of years. You're walking through layers of time, all existing simultaneously, all part of the ongoing story of the forest, and now it's time for our journey to end. We've wandered through forests around the world, from tropical rainforests to boreal taiga, from mangrove swamps to mountain cloud forests, from ancient redwood groves to sacred oak forests. We've learned about the trees and the creatures that live among them, about the connections beneath the ground and in the canopy, about the cycles of growth and death and rebirth that have been turning for millions of years. But the most important thing isn't any particular fact or any specific piece of information. It's the feeling of the forest, the sense of being part of something vast and old and interconnected. It's the peace that comes from being among trees, the quiet that allows you to hear your own thoughts, the green light that soothes your eyes, the scent of earth and leaves that grounds you in your body, the sense of time moving slowly, patiently, in rhythms deeper than human hurry. Take that feeling with you now into sleep. Imagine yourself lying on soft moss in a forest clearing, with the canopy above filtering the light, with the sound of wind in the leaves like a lullaby, with the scent of pine and earth surrounding you. Feel the forest supporting you, holding you, protecting you. Feel yourself as part of the forest, part of the great web of life that connects all living things. Your breathing is the forest breathing. Your heartbeat is the pulse of sap rising in the trees. You are not separate from nature. You are nature, resting in itself, finding peace in itself. Let go now. Release any remaining tension. Feel yourself sinking deeper, deeper into sleep, into dreams, into the green depths of the forest where everything is quiet and safe and old and wise. The trees have stood watch for centuries. They'll keep watch tonight while you sleep. You're safe in the forest. You're home in the forest. Rest now. The forest is patient. The forest is eternal. The forest is peace. Rest in the forest. Dream of the forest. Become the forest. Sleep now. Sleep deep. The forest holds you. Good night.